Hello everyone, and welcome to this special edition of MSBA's Capital Watch, our preview of the 2014 session of the Missouri General Assembly. And here with me is Mike Reed, MSBA's Associate Executive Director for Advocacy and our Chief Lobbyist. And Mike, thanks a lot for being with us.
Well, it's good to be here. It just doesn't seem like that it's time already to start this. Time flies. I just thought we just finished the last session, but it is a full-time working with the legislature now.
Absolutely. It does. It'll be here before we know it. So
that's correct.
We wanted to start talking now about issues that we might see in the General Assembly when it convenes in January. And of course, one of those is funding. And Governor Nixon has called for an increase in the foundation formula. He actually made that announcement at our annual conference in October as making progress toward fully funding the foundation formula. What is the outlook as far as what you see for funding the formula?
Well, we're very, very hopeful. The governor has announced that he really is trying to fully fund the formula within the next 3 years. We have been really at almost a level playing field for the last several years because of the economy. The economy is looking slightly better. There seems to be more money coming into general revenue, some slight increases in general revenue. So we're cautiously hopeful. I know the chairman of both the House and the Senate Appropriations Committee have been open to this discussion of moving to have more money to fully fund the formula. So we are cautiously optimistic, if that's a good word to use.
What about funding for other areas such as transportation, Mike? Would we see increases there possibly?
We certainly would like to see increases there. That's not where we're going to push. I mean, we want to increase that as much as we can. We will keep trying to increase all of those areas, but I think we'll push more for the formula first.
What about tax cut legislation, Mike? As you mentioned, we've just come off of a battle regarding tax cuts, House Bill 253 and the veto override attempt. And fortunately, we were successful on that in September, but we're going to be seeing more tax cut legislation, aren't we?
Yes, we are. That's already been promised. Working with several groups, we know that there will be more tax cut legislation coming through. Once again, and we are also working to see what is best for the taxpayers in the state of Missouri. People say, well, what is your plan? Well, with the coalition that we've been working with, are also looking to see if there is any possibility of any tax cut. But before we have a tax cut, we have to fund the items that have been previously committed to be funded, i.e. the formula, transportation, etc. So, any tax cut would have to be completely revenue neutral. So there's a long way to go. We will see, though, a tax cut or several tax cuts being promoted through the legislature. Some of the leaders want to have the tax cut passed by spring break. It'll be interesting. Our members need to be watching what we say and working very closely with their state representatives. The reason that the governor's veto was sustained was the grassroots work of our members. And we're going to need that again this next year.
So, Mike, could we see a similar scenario play out where a tax cut bill is passed, sent to the governor's office, the governor might veto that, and then we're back in our mode of trying to prevent an override?
That's correct. I could see that coming up very soon. This time, I believe that the people who are pushing the tax cut want the tax cut to be passed before the end of session, so that the governor would have to veto it and the override would have to come during session.
Mm-hmm. Another big issue, Mike, that's being discussed, of course, is the student transfer law. And that's, of course, the student transfers are taking place in the St. Louis area right now. I think the consensus seems to be that that law needs to be fixed, but there are various approaches to doing that. What sort of legislation might we see on that?
There are various approaches to that, and we're going to see some sort of legislation. The question, of course, is the students from unaccredited districts being allowed to transfer to accredited districts. We want to make sure that students in unaccredited districts have and receive the best possible education they can. We don't want to overcrowd students in accredited districts. So there's a question on how do we do that. There are several ideas that are floating around out there right now, looking at the ability of receiving districts to limit the number of seats that they have, looking at having more intense work with the unaccredited districts, perhaps schools, charter schools types being established, more mentoring programs for teachers. the question of who is going to pay for students when they transfer out. We cannot bankrupt the districts that are unaccredited by paying all the money out to the accredited districts. There's a whole group of problems. Plus the fact we have to remember that this is not only an urban problem. This could happen, as we say in the country, in the non-urban areas. So any fix, as we call it, is going to have to make sure that it works both in the urban districts and the non-urban districts. And so there's a whole, I have more questions, we have answers. There are a number of groups who are working to try to come up with some solutions, and I think you'll see a bill filed, if not the 1st of December, right after the 1st of December, to try to at least put the question on the table so people can start really discussing it.
And Mike, one of our concerns with that student transfer issue has been that sometimes it gets all tied up with other issues that we have concerns about, such as vouchers and choice.
That is correct. Some groups want to try to put vouchers and school choice and allowing students to go from unaccredited districts to any school, be they public or private. And of course, the Constitution doesn't allow that. But those things are already in there, and that's part of the discussion. And that's one of the things that has hurt it in the past. We couldn't get any farther because of that, putting those other things on there.
Mm-hmm. Another issue, Mike, that's had some attention is teacher tenure reform. Are we likely to see legislation on that?
Yes, we will see some teacher tenure reform. Some teacher evaluation / teacher tenure reform will be introduced 1st of December. What we are trying to work at is to make sure that the individual districts can establish their own method of teacher evaluation, and to make sure that it reflects student growth, but also reflects the ability of the teachers to relate to the students and get the best out of the students and what is best for each individual district. But we will see some sort of teacher tenure reform / evaluation this year.
Mike, we had an interim committee on education issues that's been meeting this fall. Hearing testimony from people around the state. Will we see any legislation come out of that committee, do you think?
Yes, we'll see some legislation. They had meetings all over the state of Missouri, listening to people and questions that they had, and many of the things that came out were the transfer, the teacher evaluation, Common Core, etc. I believe one of the things, though, that will come out of that committee is a change in the school start date. The chairman of that committee, Representative Cookson, is very adamant that he wants to start school after the day after Labor Day and finish it by Memorial Day, and so move testing to late April, early May, and so I think we'll have that discussion again. We had that discussion about 6 or 7 years ago, and the law, as we know, allows districts to establish their own calendar with input from the community. But that question will be out there again at school start date. I think also the committee will also look at expansion of the school year, expansion of the school day, and where students are not being proficient, certain requirements for Saturday school. So I think we'll see some interesting things to come out for discussion from that committee.
And on that school calendar issue, Mike, our view has always been that local school districts should have as much flexibility as possible on the school calendar.
That's right, because it reflects the community. What is right in one part of Missouri may not be right in another part of Missouri, and it's our school board members are elected locally, and they reflect the local community, and the local community should have the determination of when school starts and stops, and when various vacation times are included.
Mm-hmm. Mike, as we approach the 2014 session, once again, we'll be encouraging our members to come to Jefferson City to meet with their legislators. Tell us about some of those activities.
Well, we have our S-band visits that are on Tuesdays. We have various regions come down. We meet at our office, go over what is being discussed that day, many of the committee hearings, etc., and we encourage our members to meet and then go over to the Capitol and see their representatives and their senators and talk to them on how the various pieces of legislation affect those districts. We also have a legislative forum, which is in February, where all of our members come down and meet and listen to speeches and discussion from various elected officials. Plus, every Friday, you and I have this program where we discuss what has happened in the previous week and what's going to happen the next week. And there's a daily Twitter account that comes out on what is happening at any moment. So we try to keep our members as informed as possible, but we always want them, if they have questions, to call, write, email us, let us know what their questions are, how we can help them, and how they can help us.
And of course, Mike, our members need to be maintaining that relationship in their local districts as well with their legislators.
Oh, it's extremely important. I would really hope that all of our members and each school board has invited their representative and their senator into their buildings before the start of session, the 1st of January.
All right, Mike Reed, thanks a lot for being with us and previewing the 2014 session of the Missouri General Assembly.
Thanks.
And we thank you for joining us on this special edition of MSBA's Capitol Watch.